Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Domino. On this episode, we talk with the founder and CMO of Racklify and logistics and technology entrepreneur Bill Carlin. With over a decade of experience in e-commerce and running 3PL operations, he is a seasoned expert in the logistics and fulfillment space. He's now on a mission to revolutionize the industry by building Racklify, the largest platform ever created to help merchants seamlessly connect with 3PL warehouses. A graduate of the prestigious Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania, Bill has dedicated his career to mastering the art of creating exceptional products and delivering them to mass markets. There's so many great insights. Enjoy this interview.
Bill, thank you, sir, for taking a minute out for the show today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
So let's begin, before we get into your work in technology and being an entrepreneur, I want to know, surviving the pandemic, 4.5, 5 years ago was quite a thing and sent all kinds of shockwaves throughout all of us and the world. And now that we have a new year, how many of those ripples in the pond, so to speak, still exist for you from that time period?
Well, I'd say the biggest thing with the whole pandemic was how it affected the industry as a whole. So coming from an e-commerce background and a fulfillment background, the entire world changed when COVID happened because there was a huge, all of a sudden, transition to online sales, and the infrastructure wasn't in place to really handle it. So it created a whole bunch of new cottage industries of small e-commerce sellers and things like that. And now, since the pandemic has been over, we've kind of seen a decrease in people getting into entrepreneurship and getting into these mom and pop e-commerce stores because the demand, one, isn't there like it was during COVID, but two, a lot of those brands that were booming just because of the COVID bubble have started to kind of wane off and are no longer operating at their peak. So in my world, COVID really accelerated things, and we're still kind of feeling the fallout of what happens when millions of small businesses popped up overnight and were instant overnight successes.
So let's get to the heart and soul of what you do on a daily basis. And to do that, I want to put you in front of a bunch of third graders at Career Day. And one of the kids in the back of the room is curious, and they're like, hey, what do you do for a living? How do you answer them?
So I usually start by saying, when you buy something on Amazon, usually it comes from Amazon. They put it in that nice little box. They send it to your door. But there's a whole other group of people out there that do the same thing that Amazon does for these small businesses. And they're known as 3PLs, or third-party logistics providers. And these are people that will house your inventory because you probably don't want to put a whole bunch of pallets of goods in your house, right? They'll pick, pack, and ship it for you, right? And they'll handle all those levels of the supply chain, making sure that your goods come in, they're in good shape, the counts and the inventory is correct, and that they go out to your end customers. So that's what I've been doing for the last 10 years. In the last 6 months, we launched a new startup called Racklify that helps connect merchants and retailers with 3PLs and warehouses.
So I'm curious, in the mastermind of Jeff Bezos and this organism he's created, did he envision all of these sub-levels of revenue that are coming off of the big idea that he had?
Well, I think that's the beauty of what Amazon set out to do, right? So if you rewind, let's call it 5 to 10 years ago, Amazon was kind of a joke in the world of investing, right? So you had this big, massive company. They were promising they could get you something in 2 days, and they were literally losing money to get you your package in 2 days, right? So Amazon was not profitable till the mid-2010s, and a lot of people forget that. And a large part of this was because people like Bezos had the foresight to go, I'm not just putting a book in a box and mailing it to somebody's house. I'm redefining how we do commerce. And once we establish this standard, we're going to control a large amount of the market, and we're going to be profitable. And that's really what Amazon did that was so special is they really created a standard of 2-day shipping. They created the standard of the one-click checkout, right? All these little innovations that you're talking about, they were all purposefully done, and they were done at a financial loss in the beginning to now where we all expect this thing, and there's very few companies on planet Earth that can meet these high standards, and that's what allows Amazon to be this big behemoth that it is today.
So let's go back to that third grade mindset. What did you want to be when you were a kid? What was your dream?
I always wanted to be a dentist.
Okay. Well, then take me back to your beginnings, where you were born and raised, and what were some of the foundational seeds that were planted into you to have that entrepreneurial mindset, technology? How did that happen?
Yeah, so I grew up in central PA over near Hershey, and growing up, I was always trying to make money in the easiest way possible, right? So I didn't really enjoy putting in, a 40-hour work week. I didn't really enjoy doing all those not-so-fun things. So what I decided to do was sell things online. So starting at a young age of about 14, I started selling things online because I found that I could work for 4 or 5 hours on the weekend, drop my packages off on Wednesday, and basically make more money than all my friends that were working, 20 hours a week at the grocery store after school. So from a very early age, I started realizing that I didn't want a conventional job. I didn't want to just go do something to, punch the clock and put in 40 hours a week. I wanted to build something, I wanted to make something, and I wanted to do that on my own terms. So that's what got me really started in the entrepreneurial mindset. And from there, that's when I doubled down on e-commerce. I got into Amazon even bigger. We were approaching $10 million a year in revenue on Amazon. And the natural progression from there was to start doing 3PL services. And now the next progression on that is to help grow 3PLs through software.
So who has been kind of your inspiration, bedrock hero in your career arc, in your life?
That's a good question. I'd say early on I was, pretty obsessed with Benjamin Franklin of all people. Not a bad guy if you're gonna pick one. But I read a whole lot of like nonfiction. It's one of my favorite things to do is just pop an audiobook in the car. And one of my favorite things is to just listen to different historical figures and different founders and things like that. And, I really started to gain an appreciation for some of the other guys in the industry, like Steve Jobs, for example. Like I just did the really, really long audiobook on Steve Jobs a couple of weeks ago. And the fact that he had the foresight and the fortitude to know that he was right and push forward for 30 plus years to build something that's unique and innovative was really inspiring. And you look at Apple today and it's like, well, since Steve's been gone, there hasn't been like this groundbreaking new, like world-altering product. And, there's very few people in the world that have that level of, entrepreneurship in them. And I'd say that, Benjamin Franklin's probably if I go back where it all started, but I would say, guys like Steve Jobs, guys like Bezos, guys like, I can't think of his last name, the Fred guy that started FedEx.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like, did you ever hear the story where he bet his last $10,000, he went to Vegas and was able to buy a week's worth of jet fuel by hitting it big in Vegas because he was going to go under anyways?
I totally love that story, man. Yeah, I have. And yeah. Well, and that's a natural lead into my next question. Of all the entrepreneurs that exist on the planet right now, if you could, the one thing professionally is that learning from those that are doing things at a higher level will help you. If you could hang out and meet one of these entrepreneurs, who would it be?
who would it be? That's one I haven't. I've never really thought about that. But if I had to pick somebody, I think it would definitely be. Let's go Kevin O'Leary, right? And it's not because I think Kevin O'Leary is this big genius, but because Kevin O'Leary has his hands in so many different things, right? You got his whole stock market thing. He was involved in that VC startup thing where he, lets people invest their normal money online, right? He's done the watches. He's done all those little tiny Shark Tank companies, right? And it's just interesting to me, like the breadth that somebody that's like a mainstream venture capitalist who's pumping the kind of volume that like a Kevin O'Leary or a Mark Cuban does.
So I saw a headline the other day. Is it Kevin that's trying to buy TikTok?
He's floated the idea. I don't know if he actually could because he'd probably have to raise a bunch of money from other people. But whoever's able to buy TikTok is gonna, it's gonna be a win-win-win.
Oh yeah, absolutely it is. So let me ask you this: how do you balance this life of being the best professional you can do, satisfying all your customers, and also evolving as a human being? What is that collective energy for you every day to wake up to be the best you can be?
Well, I think it really starts with how you think about your day and how you segment your day. So, like, my big thing is when I wake up every morning, I pick one thing that I have to do that day, right? And sometimes it's something big and crazy, like I have to nail this meeting, so I got to prep for it and blah, 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 blah. But other times it might be something as simple as, hey, you got this friend you haven't called in a while. Just take a little extra 30 minutes at lunch, give them a call, right? And I try to pick like the one or two max actionable things that I think are the most important thing I have to do that day. And once I take care of that thing, then I move on to all my other priorities.
Wow, that is so cool, man. Let me ask you this. When you look back on your life, let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into an 18-year-old version of you. You could give that young version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've lived, the wisdom you've accumulated. What advice would you impart on that young version of you?
I think to be more open to connecting, right? So what I think a lot of people don't understand about business and about life is that you only really get one shot at building a network, right? Building a group of people that are around you. Because from your earliest days in your childhood, you're connecting with people, right? Then you go up through high school, you're making even more connections. You go off to college, you're making more connections. You start that first job, right? All these determine who the next group of people you meet. And it builds on each other because networks build out from each node, right? They expand outward. They don't, rarely does like a whole new tree develop, right? So the initial connections that you have in life spawn more connections, and those connections spawn more connections. So it's really important to, one, have a healthy network, right? A bunch of connections, but also have a bunch of quality friends and people that you spend your time with.
So, of everything that you've accomplished in your life and career, what are you ultimately the proudest of?
I think just doing things, right? And it sounds oversimplified, but I think the thing I'm most proud of is I will come up with an idea on Friday, and on Monday, I will do it, right? So like a perfect example of this would be, the whole Racklify thing, right? So had this idea one week, the next week, boom, built an entire development team, hired a bunch of engineers, got right down the brass tacks and started building it immediately, right? And what I've learned is that my ability to just act rather than sit there and get hung up on what's the best way to do it. How do I make this the most polished, best version of it, right? Like putting that perfectionism in the closet for a little while has really, been my crowning achievement, is just being able to immediately act on things. And I think Racklify is the newest example of that.
So at the end of the day, Bill, everyone has this perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Who do I think I am? I'm a pretty chill guy, just watch a lot of TV on the couch, movies, normal stuff. But in all seriousness, I view myself as somebody that wants to make a change that's measurable, right? Like, I don't need the fame, I don't need the spotlight, but I want to be able to look at something in life and go, that was me, that was my stamp, right? I contributed to that, or I helped build that, or, my X influenced Y, right? And for me, that's what's really important. That's what drives me, is I view myself as somebody that wants to make a change in the world and wants to see that change. And I really don't care about the size of the change as long as it has a meaningful and lasting impact.
Wow, what a great answer, man. So if anyone wants to delve into your world further, get involved in any way, shape, or form, reach out to you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, so Racklify.com is live, right? You can explore thousands of warehouses on there if you're an e-commerce business or you're a warehouse. And another thing is we just relaunched our YouTube channel. We have 11,000 subscribers. We post pretty much daily. So there's tons and tons of content there for anybody who wants to hear more of my stuff, learn about e-commerce, all of that. We cover it all on the channel.
Wonderful. Bill, this has been so refreshing. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your story. Thank you for your time, and have a wonderful new year, man.
Thank you, Joe. It was really great being on here.
Thanks for tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Domino, where we cover the world of art, literature, business, spirituality, music, and more from around the globe. Our esteemed theme music was composed and produced by the great E.E. Pointer of Kansas City's River Cow Orchestra. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Domino channel on YouTube. You can also find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.